Good afternoon and welcome to Tech Talk 3, Careers in Cybersecurity presented by Pip Jenkinson from Baidam Solutions. The Tech Talk series is brought to you by the Australian Computer Society, the ACS Foundation and the ICT Gateway to Industry Schools program. The Information and Communications Technology Gateway to Industry Schools program encourages partnerships between industry, government, schools, and their communities to build Queensland's future information technology workforce. The Gateway program is proudly supported by the Queensland Government. My name is Geraldine Pan and I will be your host today. I am an intern at the ACS Foundation and I am currently studying a Bachelor of Games Design and Development at Macquarie University. In the spirit of reconciliation, ACS acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. This series of webinars is designed to provide information for parents, students, career advisors and teachers about careers in the tech industry. Established and emerging tech leaders talk about their journeys and provide insights into study and career pathways into an amazing tech career. Each presentation will last 25 minutes, followed by a 10-minute Q&A session. Please use the Q&A function to submit a question for the presenter. Our guest presenter for Tech Talk 3 is Pip Jenkinson from cybersecurity company Baidam Solutions, Queensland's first Indigenous-owned cybersecurity consultancy company. Over to you, Pip.
Thanks very much, Geraldine, and thanks very much for everyone attending today. We're super excited to be able to participate in the Tech Talk presentations. As it was announced, my name is Pip Jenkinson. My journey into cybersecurity wasn't a linear pathway. I didn't do particularly well at school. I was academically not the best student, and I ended up coming into cybersecurity through a defence background. So I spent a fair bit of time in the ADF, and I found that the skills that I learned from a physical security perspective were quite easily transferable into a virtual security perspective. So today we're going to touch on some of the drivers that are making our industry so attractive for employment and career opportunities. I'm going to talk a little bit about the size of the market here in Australia, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the different career pathways and to show you the diverse employment career pathways that are available for students. And then the last slide is probably the one that's going to take up the most amount of time. Unfortunately, it's a fair bit of talking, and it's just me trying to explain to the audience the importance of STEM and the importance of STEAM and why those subjects are applicable to our industry. Okay, so let's understand the growth of the market. So in a digitising economy, cybersecurity is an essential economic enabler that mitigates threat and builds trust. The new economy is a digital economy. Okay, so as we enter the third decade of the 21st century, digital technology is expanding beyond a handful of industries and becoming central to the whole economy. Digitisation brings a host of benefits: improved productivity, access to more markets, and the development of new products that solve all problems. But as digital tools proliferate, they offer more targets for malicious actors who have increasingly powerful and lucrative techniques. Malicious cyber activity ranges from straightforward online fraud, such as scams using email, websites or chat rooms, to sophisticated cyber espionage and even catastrophic disruption of vital infrastructure, such as phone lines or power grids. Cybercrime just doesn't harm an organisation's business and reputation or the individual. It can also compromise a nation's security, stability and prosperity. The number of incidents of cybercrime has spiked, and I hope that many of you are reading the newspaper because it's well documented about some of the threats that we're facing here in Australia. And these perpetrators aggressively exploit flaws in digital infrastructure. Cybersecurity and its relationship with privacy and safety is therefore a front of mind concern for business leaders, regulators, and politicians who are anxious to shore up our defences against adversaries who are devising new ways to exploit vulnerable systems and networks. The growing security needs of organisations are expected to underpin the rapid evolution of the global cybersecurity sector. And to give you an example, between 2017 and 2020, global spending on cybersecurity grew from 113 US billion with a B to 147 billion in 2020. So what we see here is Australia's spend on security between those years in this slide here, and where we can see it expected to end up in, what are we now, in two very short years. We're looking to be spending around about $7.6 billion on cybersecurity. So the demand for cybersecurity is rapidly growing, with this increase in spending by around about 9% year on year for the past 4 years. And there are a couple of reasons why this is happening at such a rapid rate. First, as we touched on before, digitisation exposes businesses to more threat. Secondly, the overall threat environment is increasing. And what we mean by that is that we're being attacked from more areas. Our threat landscape is increasing. And there have been several high-profile attacks, including ones against our own government, state government agencies, Toll Group, PayID, over the past year. And then the final core driver for this demand is governments and regulators are now requiring stronger security, cybersecurity, for critical infrastructure systems of national significance. Next slide, please. All right, so let's have a look at this slide and just gently pick it apart for a moment. So what we're talking about here is the average age, if we're thinking of the age of the industry, in comparison to some of the more traditional industries that Australia has been fortunate enough to prosper from. I'm the son of a sheep farmer from Bathurst, New South Wales, and Australia was founded on the back of the sheep's back. And here we see a rapidly growing and evolving industry to support Australian cybersecurity providers. But what we can see on the bottom of the graph there is the average age of the providers, not the age of the individuals, but the company themselves. So we can see on this slide here that the average age of all Australian security providers, the companies, is only 8 years old. And of those, of that spread of businesses, there's only 9% that have been operating for 20 years or more, and they would be some of the larger global systems integrators. The sector's youth opens up opportunities, particularly for students and career advisors and teachers and parents, as we start thinking about cybersecurity as a viable and sustainable employment pathway and career option for the next generation of cybersecurity warriors. So it's going to open up many more opportunities for the Australian economy, but it also presents some challenges, right, which we'll touch on in a moment. Next slide, please. So we can see here that the substantial growth in cybersecurity spending has also led to a dramatic increase in the workforce. And to put that into perspective, there have been around about 4,000 full-time jobs added since 2017. Now, to put that in a total perspective, there are around about 26,500 people that work in the sector in a full-time capacity in Australia today. Now, this figure includes both employees in the cybersecurity sector, including organisations like myself, as well as in-house cybersecurity consultancies. So they're the guys that work in organisations, say, for instance, like the Department of Defence. The growth in jobs, however, this is the interesting thing, the growth in cybersecurity jobs has far outpaced the national average. Between 2017 and 2020, employment in our sector grew by 6% year on year, while the national average workforce expanded by just 2% for each year. So we're outperforming by threefold. In absolute terms, the total number of direct jobs in the sector is comparatively small when we compare it to other total jobs, say, in the construction industry. However, cybersecurity underpins the digitisation and growth of the entire economy, meaning that it has a much greater impact on Australia's overall employment through indirect jobs. Strong job creation in cybersecurity is likely to continue, with 7,000 more jobs to be expected to be added to the Australian economy by 2024. And there are a number of programs that are supporting this expansion. The Australian Signals Directorate Cyber EXP program and the Australian Defence Force's Cyber Gap program are focusing on developing Australia's workforce to meet this growing demand. Further programs will be added to the economy in the next year as a result of the Australian government's commitment and their recently published cybersecurity strategy for 2020, outlining some initiatives of both state and territory governments. Now, to put that into perspective for some of the students on the call and some of the career advisors and teachers and parents, I did a quick Google search on the 25th of October, so 2 days ago. Now, I found on Seek, and this is just a generalisation, but so I found on Seek 8,000 open jobs for lawyers. I found 24,000 open jobs for accountants. I found 6,000 open jobs for doctors, and I found 14,000 open headcount for teachers. I found 34,000 open headcount for jobs in cybersecurity and technology as a whole. So what we're saying here on the call, and the information that we can all do ourselves in our own time, is to see where this rapid growth of the workforce is happening, and then understand that if we don't take the steps to address that, we are staring down a skills deficit of a significant amount of unfillable roles. Next slide, please. All right, so this very messy mind map here is to give the audience an understanding of some of the roles that are available to students looking to get into the industry. We can see down the bottom right hand side of the screen, the green family of roles is all around governance and auditors and governance, risk and compliance roles, whereas immediately to the left we start seeing a family of employment opportunities around threat intelligence. As we can start to navigate ourselves around the different colour groups of the families, what screams to mind, or what comes to mind, and very obvious, is that for each one of these categories, there are not only jobs available, but there are entire teams of jobs. Security architecture, for instance, top left, is an enormous category. And when we start thinking around future-proofing ourselves as individuals for roles that are not only available today that need filling, but also in the future. And when we're talking about the future, we're not talking about 5 years down the track. We're talking about tomorrow, that these roles are out there and they need capable, enthusiastic people to fill them and to help protect the national economy and to help protect each other. Next slide, please. So the future of work and some of the things that we can start seeing are around things like cybersecurity analysts, cybercrime specialists, obviously working on for the good guys. Cyber law consultants is an absolutely fascinating part of the market that's emerging, where we can see that law and the concepts of law are being outstripped in some instances by the evolution of technology. So we're now seeing instances where students are following down a law degree, but then to specialise in technology and specialise in cyber law. Application analysts, service delivery managers, SOC managers. So SOC is an acronym for Security Operations Centre. Mine is running out there right now, so I do apologise if there's some noise that you hear in the background. Pen testers are not people that test biros, they're penetration testers, and these are what's commonly referred to in the industry as hackers. This role is particularly important as we start to test the viability of an application and we try to find holes or poke holes in those security controls that have been wrapped around it. It's a fascinating career in itself, and it's one that when you get started on this discovery, It's very well suited for individuals who don't like getting told no, because when you're testing, you're challenging yourself to find the yes, and the yes is that pathway that allows you to navigate successfully around security controls to exploit vulnerabilities. Incident responders, security auditors, and then as a Chief Information Security Officer, which is the CISO. And we see all of these roles being advertised at the moment, and what is underpinning this is our rapid but sustainable spend on cybersecurity. Next slide, please. Righto, so this is the slide that I spoke to you about when we started, which is a fair bit of talking, and I don't mean to bore you, but I just mean to really touch on four important things, which is closing the skills gap, articulating a meaningful pathway to employment that supports different avenues into ICT, and if we remember that last or the second last slide that we saw, there are dare I say 50 or 60 different roles inside IT security alone that are highly sought after, and this concept of there are many rivers to the ocean. So if we just start with that bottom point first, and what I mean by many rivers to the ocean is I mean that kids, students, reskilling adults don't need to follow a linear pathway into cybersecurity. You don't need to come with a university degree. You don't need to come as a straight A student. We've got many men and women who work inside Baidam Solutions that are either ex-army like myself or ex-police. One of the young ladies that's made a very successful transition into cybersecurity, who's an Indigenous girl, dropped out of school in year 10 and, like Geraldine, threw herself into a gaming design course. For this young lady, gaming design and technology was a form of escapism. We used technology to escape from the day-to-day mundane. In that gaming design course, she was exposed to different concepts that are very attractive to our industry, concepts like programming and coding. We have supported this young lady and invested in her technical capability. And now I'm very proud to say to the audience that through this enablement of technical skills, this young lady is now certified on 3 defence platforms and is the first female Indigenous security engineer in Queensland. So the message there is to say that whilst STEM is important, and STEAM, and we'll touch on that in a moment, it's not the be all and end all. Your ATAR is not the be all and end all. There are many instances where hiring organisations and hiring managers, and myself being a hiring manager, is far more interested in attitude than aptitude. We can't teach you how to work hard. That comes naturally. We can teach you technical, absolutely. So the cybersecurity industry relies on dedicated people with a specialised skill set. And these skills are typically learned as part of a comprehensive science, technology, engineering and maths education. And without this strong STEM or STEAM education program, the cybersecurity industry will be unable to fill all of its positions and develop and mature for the next several years. Now, why is STEM and STEAM so important? Well, it represents a cross-disciplinary approach to education. In a STEAM program, students take classes that integrate across all 5 of these areas and then apply what they learn in real-world projects. STEAM education starts at the elementary school level. Thousands of elementary, middle and high schools across the country are designated as STEM or STEAM Centres of Excellence, which means they focus on these 4 or 5 areas. One of the goals of a STEM or STEAM education is to better prepare young people for careers in the technology industry. The skills learnt in these education environments are the same skills required for a career in cybersecurity. Educating more Australians in STEM and STEAM offers several important benefits, not only to the cybersecurity industry, but to the national economy as a whole, and I'll just rattle off a couple of them. So with those educational foundations and the principles of STEM and STEAM, we will be able to fill that growing shortage of cybersecurity warriors. We will be able to close the skills gap. Virtually every cybersecurity related position that I had up on that slide 2 slides ago, the very colourful one, relates back to science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics. Yet I don't think, and this is maybe a question for the Q&A section, I don't think that our education system is turning out enough students with STEM based educations. The result of that is quite painfully well documented, which we are staring down a skills deficit. In Australia alone, it's in excess of 500,000 jobs this year that will not be filled. In America, to put that into perspective, it's 3.5 million. So, whilst it sounds all doom and gloom, I would like to point out that STEM education is more than vocational training. It can absolutely help and assist in not only understanding technology in all of its applications in the workforce, in government applications, but also your own personal security. As the threat of cyber attacks, cyber espionage, cyber terrorism continue to grow, cybersecurity must keep pace. There is a saying in our industry that as a defender, we have to get it right 100% of the time. An attacker only needs to get it right once. So we must always be on our A game. And then if we do all this together, we're going to grow our bottom line and the economy. So to promote STEM and STEAM for specific applications in cybersecurity, it's important to recognise that STEM education to society and in general, which we've touched on, and the benefits of this education will go well beyond just filling those much needed cybersecurity jobs. So with that, I'd like to point out that many companies, not just Baidam Solutions, but many companies have partnered with STEM schools to support graduate positions and vocational guiding and mentoring, as well as Tafe institutions, as well as traditional university institutions. And with that, what we hope to do is we hope to close the skills gap. We hope that Australia starts to become an exporter of skills rather than being a traditional importer. And one of the things that I think is so important to remember that I've certainly learned, having worked in the industry for way too long, that I'm not going to tell you how long I've worked here for, is that when COVID hit all of us and the effects were catastrophic, but one of those things that resonated particularly with our industry and the importance of developing our own sovereign skills capability is that our industry has relied very heavily on importing skills from the subcontinent. And when those planes stopped flying and those skills were not able to come to Australia to take up work, I think the industry and the sector had a really big wake-up call. And now that wake-up call is to say we are a diverse, inclusive, supporting, loving, and at times challenging industry. But if you're willing to have a go and if you're willing to apply yourself, there are jobs out there for everybody. Now, that's basically everything that I wanted to talk to you guys and girls in a nutshell. I want to thank you for your attention, and if there's anything that I've said or mentioned on today's podcast that elicits a question or you'd like to know more information, I'm hoping that the guys who are organising the call will be able to provide my contact details to you, and I'll be more than happy to either come in and speak with you individually, your students, or your school. So thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Pip. We now have some questions from our audience. Do you have hackers at Baidam Solutions?
Yeah, we do. We do. And there are two types of, well, generally speaking, there are two types of hackers. There are the white hat hackers. So now just picture Gandalf the Grey from Lord of the Rings. He's the good guy. And then we've got black hat hackers. And then in between those two extremes of black and white, there is a vast array of hackers that fall somewhere in the middle. White hat hackers are out there to do good, to support organisations like ours and the government, to protect people like yourselves. Black hat hackers, they're the ones that we're all worried about. So we do have hackers that work in our organisation, and they are a very scary bunch of men and women, and I'm glad that they're my friends.
Can I do law and then move into cybersecurity?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the speaking circuits that I do up here is with BrisSec and CyberCon, and there are a number of lawyers that are specialising in that cybersecurity domain. They're what we refer to as subject matter expert witnesses, and will appear at a federal level in the Supreme Court, as well as the local courts at a state level.
What cyber concepts should we be teaching in school?
Oh, crumbs. That question is almost. Perhaps could I leave that question whilst the author of the question just puts a little bit more context in it. For instance, what is the age of the students that you're teaching? Because my answer will be depending on some more information. Will be to say things like, understanding, or how about this? If we're talking to the younger audience in the years 5 and 6, we're talking about going home to mum and dad and making sure that the password to the home router is not password 123, or it's not admin 123, and we're actually starting to take some of the learnings that we're getting from the school classroom, and we're taking that at home. And I think that's a really good way of educating kids to make cybersecurity real and tangible. I once was. We have very strong relationships with Queensland Fraud and Cybercrime Squad, and one of the lectures that I sat in on at the then Superintendent Brian Hay, APN, was that he used this analogy to say, as parents, when we teach our children, and as teachers, when we teach our children to cross the road, we hold hands and we teach our kids to do a couple of things: look right, look left, look right again, to never run across the pedestrian crossing, and to take your time. Now, the reason behind that methodology, Superintendent Brian Hay was talking about, was that because as adults, we understood that the threat was real. It was tangible. You could hear the car engines, you could smell the petrol, you could understand that there are a lot of risks going on. But he went a step further to say, but when we give, particularly a young student, when we give a young student access to our parents' mobile phones or tablets in an unsecured manner, we are opening up a portal to communicate with our children to every criminal on the internet, and we don't understand it because the threat is not real. And so he was trying to draw a correlation between, just as we teach our kids to cross the road, we have to teach our kids how to interact with the internet in a very safe way. I hope I answered your question. Probably not, but if you'd like to shoot me something offline, I'll try and do a better job.
Assuming you want to go into a coding-based career, what coding languages would you recommend to have in a skill set?
All of them. And I say all of them because they're all used in, whether it's Python, it doesn't really matter. All of them are languages that are used in different areas of cybersecurity, and dare I say, technology, application development. I would strongly suggest getting au fait with certainly with Python. But please don't. The concept here is not to sort of put the blinkers on and just do one. Be familiar with them all, because different programming houses will use different languages.
Do you think a Tafe Certificate 4 in cyber will be a good way into the industry?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The connections that we have in the educational department, both here locally and interstate, would indicate to me that the Tafe cybersecurity courses are very highly sought after. Yeah, they are. Yeah, absolutely rock solid.
Did you end up studying at university?
I did. When I left the army, I went back to uni as a mature age student. I went back to my hometown in Bathurst, and I studied business with a major in marketing. And when I finished that degree, I got a sales job with Guinness, working for Guinness in Dublin.
What is the best way to get into a cybersecurity domain as a Year 12 student? Is it best to do a university degree, go through a Tafe course, or others?
Okay, well, I mean that's a really good question, and one that comes up a lot from some of the students that I mentor, and it all comes down to the individual. There are many instances where some of the brightest and smartest hackers that we work with and work with the government come from no formal qualification background whatsoever. There's no university degree there, and there's no TAFE degree. It's on-the-job learning. It's applying yourself. It's asking questions. It's not satisfied with no. But I guess if you've got your heart set on going to university, the great thing about university is that when you come out of that degree after 4 years, what that's telling a potential employer is not that you're a subject matter expert in anything, is that you've stuck something out for 4 years. Even when you've become frustrated with your lecturer, you haven't quit. And so one of the things about university that shows a potential employer is that you are in it for the long haul. But what I would encourage is that whilst anyone is doing a university degree or a TAFE degree, is we start looking at industry certifications. So they're things like CISP, CISM, CRISC, anything from the SANS Institute. And what that's going to do is it's going to supplement your theoretical learning through university with some really good technical backbone stuff.
Back to the question with what cyber concepts should we be teaching at school?
Yep.
For primary kids, it's safety. For secondary kids, it's technology knowledge, networks, internet, email safety, and careers.
Wow. Okay. So for the little ones, I would be absolutely talking to them about internet safety and how to behave responsibly on the internet. We have seen a great deal, and quite rightly so. We've seen a great deal of focus on this concept of consent, and for both young boys and young girls. And what I would like to see is that same focus on something that's critically important to shaping young men and women for the future, is that same diligence around internet security. Because I can assure you that as long as we need a police force, we will need people like us to protect people like you from all the bad out there that wants to happen. For the older students, it would be more around understanding the languages that are used, the different languages, the different coding languages, and then starting to really formulate those, I guess, those subject choices that are going to set them up for success later on. You know, we focus very heavily on STEM. I'm not a STEM degree holder. I fit very squarely in that A of STEAM. But it would be around those concepts of, I guess user behavior. The easiest way to describe it is user behavior awareness. Just understanding how we're interacting on the internet, that every time we touch the keyboard, we leave a fingerprint. Every time we send an email, we leave a breadcrumb. And as my mum would say, don't ever put anything in an email that you wouldn't want me to read, because you can never delete anything.
What coding language would you suggest students start with to learn?
Well, you know what? I wouldn't actually start with a language. I know this is going to sound a little bit obtuse, but just hear me out. If we're starting coding, let's not focus on the language per se to be prescriptive. Let's focus on the concept of coding. There are, I think, what's the one rate up here in Queensland? Is it coding ninjas, where they don't actually start talking about the language that's been used until kids have actually started to do very basic drag and drop coding activities. As students would then mature down the pathway of understanding what language is more appropriate for their career choice, then we can start to explore what's used in gaming, what's used in application development. But I would, if we're starting to introduce kids to coding, there are some really cool programs that are being run in regional remote communities, certainly looking after some of our Indigenous brothers and sisters up in those regional remote areas where the language is not even spoken about. It's the action, it's the doing, it's the rewarding nature of building something and building an AI robotics program that does something. The language, I think, is the bit where we start getting into the more prescriptive manner of education. What I think, and look, I'm not an educator, so I don't know, but what I have seen work well is this idea of allowing kids to have fun and creating something out of nothing, or creating something out of binary code. And once we see that big beautiful smile and that acknowledgement of this is fun, this is interesting, it's not boring, then we can start talking to them about language. It's a little bit of a different concept when we start drawing a correlation perhaps with that learning experience and music, where we do learn we do learn from a very prescriptive manner, theory, chords, scales, and it becomes a language that we must learn to put together a musical piece. Technology is a little bit different, and we can actually build and destroy things without understanding the fundamental languages that support those programs. And I think that to get a better engaged classroom, perhaps it would be worthwhile to explore that without any of these traditional Python languages or something like that.
We only have time for one final question. What is the Baidam initiative?
Oh, okay. Yeah, great question. So the Baidam initiative is to identify that as quickly as the audience can rattle off Indigenous sports stars. In my industry, I found it very difficult to rattle off Indigenous IT stars. And the Baidam initiative is one where we understand that our industry has put a number of significant barriers in front of kids to get a start. And some of those things are access to education and the cost of certifications. So the Baidam initiative is a philanthropic arm of Baidam Solutions. We've paid for 2 lifetime scholarships for Indigenous STEM students in universities, one here in Queensland, the Queensland University, and one down in Canberra. We've paid for 10 SANS certifications. They're the industry certs that I spoke about earlier. And what we're hoping to do is, through that initiative, is we start to create's the wrong word. The kids were already perfect. We're enabling the kids to be technically brilliant. They're always capable of doing what the industry is asking for them. Perhaps they didn't come from a background where they could afford access to the education that would make them appropriate for employment. So Baidam Solutions pays for that. And then the only thing that we ask in return is that they become role models for the next generation of kids that are more interested in coding than kicking a footy round or playing tennis like Ash Barty.
That brings our Tech Talk to a close. Sincere thanks to Pip Jenkinson for providing an insight into career opportunities in cybersecurity. We hope you can join us again next week, where we will host Will Shrapnel from HeliMods, who will talk about tech careers in the 4th Industrial Revolution. For more information on careers in tech and the recording of this presentation, visit the ACS Foundation website. Stay safe.